What's happening, everybody? This is Dave over at Green Hat Kiteboarding. I got here Steve, and the other day we decided to go behind the boat and try to replicate some conditions that were a little like a bay run, kinda.
Like a little surf crossover, good conditions to test foils in.
For sure. And with that, what we decided to do was we took the 960R, the 980S, and the 985X. We used a couple different categories. What was kind of the experience of the whole situation? We did straight up paddle up. This was not tow rope assisted. So we are technically X ropes qualified too, by the way.
It felt like it just gave it a little bit better of a real world feel to ride these foils for what I would do, and you know, you're getting the full range. So we started with the 960R. This thing kind of just threw me up on foil when I went to paddle up. It definitely had more glide than any of the other foils. The pump really surprised me because I spend most of my time on it's the summer, so in the ocean, on the 980S, downwinding, and then surfing on the 985. This foil projects, I was almost passing the boat at one point. I caught the boat just pumping this thing just to see how fast it would go, and it just projects forward so much.
And just to kind of clarify just real quick, we were between
10 and 12 knots around.
Yeah, I think at times 16.
I was a couple of wakes back too, so it was impressive. It was impressive how fast this thing pumped. I mean, that's the first thing I noticed was like how much speed you can generate through pumping and just projecting forward that you don't get out of the X, or not as much out of the S. You know, there's a reason guys are racing on higher aspect foils. You can very clearly see it after that test. Turning, this is not my favorite foil. You know, the boat wake that we were surfing, think of it like short period bumps, like bay bumps or something. So in the ocean, if you're on a wave, it's gonna turn a lot better. If you're in drawn out bumps, it turns a lot better. It's actually fun, really fun to downwind this in very light conditions, and it does turn really good. When you have to make those tight turns, that's when it's very slow to roll, and it wants to be drawn out a lot more. And it was actually interesting to go, well, we did one wave basically on this one, and then one wave on this one, and one wave on this one. Each one was a few minutes long, so I can directly feel each foil loosening up, and you can just go down the line of like, this is like riding a skateboard with really tight trucks that you just gotta turn it slow and long, but you can still turn it, have a lot of fun. And then, you know, as we went to the 980, it got a little more loose. Turbulence was a little hectic because we had a boat driver who does not have foil eyes either to really see the wake and know what's going on. So you guys were outrunning me a little bit at times, and
dude, I was just filming.
I was also I almost climbed back on the boat from the foil a couple times too, because we were that close. And with that, having two outboards, there's quite a bit of prop wash and turbulence. This one was way more pitchy in the turbulence. There was a lot of lift. It would get a little unpredictable, and it was more like, you know, granted this is a liftier foil than the other two.
Sure.
This one was a little, like, it would make those subtle movements, just like it has a really short fuse or something. Exactly that, just pitchy. And you felt like you had to hang on to it a little bit more, and you kind of had to go in a little more ready to cut through turbulence. Whereas if on the extreme end, the X, you just shoot right through it and you don't really feel any of the bubbles or any of that nonsense that's going on with the foil. So this one you definitely feel the turbulence the most. And a point about breaching too, they all breach. This one breaches not as good as the other ones. It's for a couple reasons. It's really hard to lay it over and turn it to get a good angle for that air to not get under the foil, but also in smaller, tighter bumps that I've noticed downwinding it, you know, behind a boat, bay style bumps, things like that. It's really common to, if you're peeling out of a bump or a wave, to just have a little bit of wingtip when your foil's almost flat like this and come out. And you get a little bit of, just because it has so much more span than the other two.
Totally. And also when you're downwinding, or at least I've found, you're almost closer to breaching because you're constantly changing your height.
You know, this might be more downwind specific for guys, but it's a lot of the, this happened to me quite a bit on the R's in general. When you're kind of just looking over your shoulder and peeling out and not fully paying attention to exactly how high you are, if the bump you're on is a little bit steep and that wingtip comes out, you just go swimming.
Yeah.
As far as glide goes on this one, This is the only foil that stood out that I think I could have just stood there the whole time and did nothing. My feet can be way closer together on this than any of the other foils. I think that has a little bit to do with it being pitchy. I shouldn't say pitchy. It's not very pitchy. It's very, very stable foil.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit more pitchy than these two, so my feet can be a little bit closer together comfortably. Aside from that, just crazy speed when you're pumping and projecting forward. You can really stand on this thing and just cruise. You know, arms at your side. I think a common misconception with these foils is just a little thing that I would like to touch on for downwind guys. Everybody assumes glide and you get all the glide and all the speed out of this thing. These are a little bit more advanced than the S foils to ride. And the 980S is going to be a little bit more user-friendly than a foil like this for the intermediate level rider or the guy who's just coming in and learning how to downwind and do his thing with that. In general, with pumping and with all of this stuff, this is going to be definitely your more advanced. I think the X and the R are both going to be for a more advanced level rider.
Yeah, I would never put someone on an X as their first foil.
You know, the funny thing, I think it's a very controlled, easy foil to ride. And I think it would be a really good foil actually for someone who's brand new. Maybe turns a little bit much, but they will probably not have a lot of success learning how to pump on it.
And that's
very cardio heavy.
Yeah.
This, less forgiving. So same, it pumps really good, but it's gonna drop out a little bit easier. It's gonna have a higher stall speed than the S. And yeah, that makes it a little challenging it's a little bit more pitchy too. So in general, the S is just like, in my opinion, the perfect middle of the road.
Yeah.
Like, do it all foil.
Well, then let's talk about the 980S behind the boat.
Yeah, the 980S, like if I could only have one foil, this is the foil that I would have. Just because it really does everything really well. I don't think anyone's ever had a bad time on the 980S. It does everything. Behind the boat, our boat driver was going fast. So my first fear was that I was not gonna be able to keep up with the boat wake because that was really fast. I wasn't used to be able to pump that fast. This kept up with the pump. Paddle up felt about the same. You know, I'll say the 960R paddled up a little bit easier. Kind of wanted to throw you on foil a little bit more. This came up a little bit more gradual, but still really easy to get up. Pump was really good. Not quite as fast of a pump. Could still pump this foil forever. It's really easy on you. Immediately noticed that I can turn this a lot better.
And you can see it.
I could immediately feel the difference in how hard I can lay into a turn, how much I could push it. Keep in mind, it's a small boat wake that we had with not a lot of room to work with too. So cutting through Turbulence on this then became a step down from here, which was interesting. It still felt like you still really felt the turbulence cutting through it, but it was less going in on your toes, kind of getting ready to hold the thing in the water, and you can be a little bit more relaxed as you kind of glide through it. Overall, this is actually probably, I would say, the most user-friendly and fun one behind the boat.
I think it's the most user-friendly.
By a
if
mile.
You're looking to learn, maybe not the 980S for everybody, but I think the S series from Code is like...
I will stand on the 1300S being like the best beginner downwind foil.
Sure.
For SUP.
Yeah.
For power wing, in my recent power wing journey, I do not like big foils because when the power wing is deployed, I am holding on for dear life.
Totally. Yeah, you're powered up.
It's holding on for dear life on big foils.
Yeah.
But
we will be getting all into that as well.
Yeah.
We'll be talking about that in another video. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Just to kind of touch on it, like if you are used to 1150 like myself, SUP foiling, and then you try to parawing in 1150, you're just trying to figure out ways of keeping that from just shooting out of the water.
Yeah. In the ocean, I really am never on anything like bigger than the 980. For our bay runs, I have an 1130 that I ride a lot, and pretty much anytime under power on the 1130, I feel like I'm gonna blow up.
Yeah.
But I'm also using a 5 meter most of the time so that I can get yanked up on foil pretty quick, and that has a little bit to do with it.
Totally.
But yeah, S definitely middle of the road, like perfect. I don't want to say middle of the road as in like average. Like this is a really fun foil, but it's the most user friendly for guys looking to downwind with it. you know, for paddling up, it's a really easy foil to paddle up. For the power wing, the 980, I can hold it down with really no issues with the power wing when I'm under good power too. This thing glides great.
And it pumps great.
Yeah.
You have to maintain less with your pump on the 980S though.
Yes, this is a lot more forgiving to pump. You don't go as fast with your pump and project forward with as much speed, but you can, like, if you prone this foil, you can just stay up forever on this thing.
Yeah. Also, just from me, and I've only ridden the 980S, the 850S, and the 770 are 980 or S series. Doesn't really matter where your mast is. On the R series, you got to keep that mast in that really good sweet spot where you're like on the edge of about to breach and maybe like 5 inches from there.
I think that comes with the more advanced level of the R foils. They just like to be, they're less forgiving.
Yeah.
So you got to be higher in the water column. You have to be more on it with your pump. They have a higher stall speed. The 980 you can grave dig surprisingly well. I've pumped this out of some holes while I'm proning at like 180 pounds that I didn't think I would ever be able to pump a foil this size out of.
Yeah.
Which this is actually becoming a pretty big foil for me at this point for what I like to ride. It's getting a lot less use.
And then I guess that kind of brings us to the X. And also, why don't you talk about your configuration real quick? For all of these, you rode the same exact situation.
Yes, I really like these small fuse. The extra small fuse I used to play around with a little bit. It was just a little too pitchy for me. And I'm riding some really small sups, so it's not worth how much harder it is to paddle up with the extra small fuse.
Sure.
And then I have this awesome chopped 135 R-tail.
Okay.
Which is a favorite because I was too cheap to buy a 120 R-tail, and this was a little bit big for me.
Yeah. And we'll talk about chopping as well in another video and why you decided to do that. Because I think there's a lot more than just that reason.
I love this tail.
Yeah, I know you do.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It's like the only tail that I ride. Yeah, 985X. This is what I was looking for a long time for prone foiling.
Okay.
I love this thing.
Because you originally started with the A10, and man, I keep like just dropping videos, but like we're gonna do a video about the A10, the A90, the 985, but testing it in the same conditions as the S and the R, you know, it's actually kind of funny because this is probably the easiest to paddle up. This was maybe the hardest to paddle up.
This is not the easiest foil to paddle up.
Yeah, and we waited till the end.
Yeah, we did it last.
Yeah.
Paddle ups were a little tricky with this. I had to get a lot of paddle strokes down. It wants to come up, but it's very slow. You need energy right there.
Yeah.
So to paddle it up, if you're not in steep bumps or like a good wave that has some power to it, it's definitely more challenging. On the boat wake, noticeably more challenging. So one thing that I noticed going from the 960 to the 980 to then this, front foot pressure, hang on a second. It was a totally different feel.
Okay.
I don't know if, I haven't seen the footage to know what it looks like or anything, but I felt like my board was like hitting the water for a second. I had to get a couple extra paddle strokes. I was waiting for that little extra pressure on my front foot and I wasn't getting it, and I just had to take that in for a second and adjust for it. That's really cool on the feel of these. It lets you kind of drop in on bigger waves.
Okay.
Go down the face of bigger bumps, surf it a little harder. You just don't have as much pushing at your front foot.
Sure. That's one of the things that I don't love about the 980S.
Yeah, the front foot pressure.
Front foot pressure.
They're definitely a front-footed foil in my opinion, but
Yeah.
they still feel pretty balanced. I like that feel.
Yeah, and some people like it and some people don't.
Yeah, this is extremely neutral. It's very, very well balanced. You know, we're leaving the topic of behind the boat here a little bit, but I had some prone sessions. I just got this one, so I had some prone sessions on it. And I was noticing it wants to surf top to bottom like a shortboard. Like it wants you to hit white water and find those top to bottom lines. And when you go through those turns, the breach is unbelievable on this thing. On all the X's, it's unbelievable. This one in particular, I feel like I could slide it across the top of the water and not fall. and like barely even wobble. There's something about the way that it wants to turn that you feel like you can set up like it's a shortboard and you could just take on anything.
Okay.
You're not really thinking about much other than just doing the move that you want to do. Anyway, behind the boat, pump of this foil is labor intensive. It does not project forward. It pumps good. I think there's a little bit of confusion that some people have on whether these foils pump or not. They pump, they're physically demanding though. I have no problem pumping the 810 back out in pretty light conditions. I mean, we had a session in the winter where I was in a full suit and like really, really, really minor waves, and you could pump the thing all the way out the back, no problem.
Yeah.
I am dying and out of gas by the time I get way out there, where something like the 980, I can stay up for a lot more waves. Anyone who's good at pumping it and linking waves is not going to have any issues pumping and linking on this thing. You'll just notice instead of projecting forward, it's a very slow, just you get there when you get there kind of thing, and that just takes more time, takes a little more energy. With that, there was no chance that I was going to pump faster than the boat the way that I was on the 960. I was a little bit worried about being able to keep up on the boat again with this one, because that was a little harder to keep up with it at times, and this still was able to keep up. It still pumps good enough that you can catch, you know, you can kind of make some forward ground if you have to with it. As far as turning, this was the most dramatic difference in turning, is what it felt like, at least. I don't know what it looks like. Probably terrible.
No, it looks good. I mean, listen, you kind of nailed it. Like, this is kind of like your longboard turn. Like your feet were a little closer together. Your movement was kind of like that, and then this is where you started to do a little bit more snap, and then this is where you almost were doing more snap, but also like out of the snap doing another turn. So like your turn cadence went up.
This rolls over so smoothly and comes around so smooth. You could just push on it, and without that front foot pressure, you could just push on it as hard as you want, and you don't feel like when you're gonna kind of come up out of the water.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you get those real hard turns and you're hanging on like this. This thing, you go to drive it and it just drives through a turn.
Sure.
It's really, really loose and fun, and the breach is just unbelievable on it. Most of the time that you're breaching it, I just have looked back at clips and seen my tips out. I didn't even know they were out at the time. The real fun times though, when you breach it, you can feel it when you're like sliding across the water. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Which means that it goes through turbulence pretty well.
Yeah, turbulence on this thing was like a breeze. Cutting from one side of the boat to the other. I think it was if I remember correctly, it was like an awkward, weird, slow time, and I didn't have a lot of speed and had to just make a last minute jump across to stay with the boat wake. And didn't think it was gonna pump through it physically because I was going slow, but it pumped through it no problem. It handled the turbulence way easier than the other ones. This whole line, the 810, the 890, and the 985, those are the three that I have.
Mm-hmm.
These always surprise me when you're just cutting through white water that's rolling off the back of a bump and there's some bubbles and turbulence there, or if you're coming through the back of a wave in the surf and there's a bunch of bubbles and chaos and water moving around. This thing has just surprised me every time with how easily you can cut through it and not be affected by it. This one is by a mile the most pitch stable. Okay. You could feel it in the way your pumps. It's a little slower, more dramatic of a cadence and less of that kind of like tap.
Thanks for tuning in. Thank you, Steve, for coming over and explain. It was really fun to watch you behind the boat. And if you have any questions on the code stuff, feel free to hit us up in the comments or give us a call, 732-284-3800. And next on the list for Steve is going to be the aluminum mast, because we have not done anything with it, and you know, Steve's been riding the 80 plus for a while now.
Yeah.
So interested to see what you think of that. What do you think so far?
It's about time Code came out with a aluminum mast.
I know.
It's pretty solid.
We saw it at AWSI.
Yeah, we saw it at AWSI last year. It's pretty solid. I'm excited to get on it. I think it looks good. Yeah. It looks better than like some of the other aluminum masts that I've seen.
Well, thanks again, and until next time, go get on foil. Later, guys.
Peace.